The note was short, cold, final. To anyone who finds this, please don't call anyone. I have made my peace. The ink was still wet when Veronica Hale placed it on her nightstand, beside an empty glass of wine and a bottle of sleeping pills. Outside, the city stretched endlessly beneath her penthouse window, beautiful, brilliant, and utterly indifferent. She had built it all. An empire worth billions, a name whispered with awe and fear in boardrooms across the world. Yet tonight, she was nothing but a broken woman in a silk nightgown, her heart caving under the weight of a loneliness money could never cure. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in stories that remind us of our shared humanity, please, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe, because sometimes one small act of goodness can change everything. Veronica's phone buzzed, breaking the silence. Maintenance appointment confirmed. AC repair scheduled at 8 p.m. She almost laughed, a cruel joke from the universe. The air conditioning wasn't broken, but somehow the building's automated system had called it in anyway. She sighed and didn't bother cancelling. What did it matter? By the time the repairman arrived, it would all be over. Down in the lobby, Preston Cole checked the job ticket twice. He was bone-tired, sweat marking the edges of his grey shirt, and his back still ached from carrying his tool bag up 3 flights at the last stop. He'd taken the evening shift because he couldn't afford to say no. His little girl Emma needed braces, and after losing his wife 2 years ago, every extra dollar mattered. Just one more job, he muttered, grabbing his worn toolbox, then home. When the elevator opened to the 40th floor, he expected the usual, a grumpy client complaining about the temperature. What he didn't expect was the silence, the kind that feels heavy, unnatural, like it's holding its breath. He knocked once. No answer, then again. Finally, a faint voice. Come in. The door creaked open to a world of glass and marble. The air smelled faintly of perfume and despair. And there she was, sitting on the edge of her bed, a crimson silk dress draped carelessly across her shoulders, her eyes red and distant. A woman who looked both powerful and destroyed. He hesitated. Ma'am, I'm here to... Please, she whispered, her voice trembling. Just make it fast. The words froze him in place. I'm sorry? He stammered, unsure if he'd heard right. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time he saw it, the emptiness in her eyes, the surrender. He didn't see a CEO. He saw someone who had already said goodbye to the world, and in that instant, something inside him shifted. He didn't know her name, her story, or her pain. But he knew that look. He had seen it once before, in the mirror, the night his wife died in that hospital bed. And he'd wanted to give up too. I'm the repair guy, he said softly. I fix things. For a moment she blinked, confused. Then a single tear fell, cutting a line down her cheek. Then you're too late, she murmured. He set his tools down and stepped closer, careful not to startle her. Maybe not. She stared at him as if trying to decide whether to tell him to leave or to stay. But he didn't move, didn't rush her. Instead, he quietly picked up the wine glass, set it aside, and opened the curtains wide. The city light poured in, flooding the room with gold and white, reflecting off the skyline like 1,000 unspoken stories. Who sent you? She finally asked. The building, I guess, he said, forcing a small smile. But maybe someone else did. She almost laughed again. God doesn't send air conditioning men. Preston's eyes softened. Maybe he does. Maybe he sends people who fix broken things. Something inside her cracked. The mask of indifference she had worn for years began to slip, revealing a woman suffocating under guilt and isolation. She confessed between trembling breaths, how her company had ruined lives, how her husband had left, how her wealth had become a cage. Every day I wake up and hate myself a little more, she whispered. And tonight, I just wanted it to stop. Preston listened, not as a stranger, but as someone who knew pain intimately. He told her about Emma, about the nights when he couldn't sleep because he was terrified of failing her, about the morning he found his daughter standing on a chair, pretending to make breakfast, so Daddy wouldn't cry anymore, and how that tiny act of love had kept him alive. Veronica's lips trembled. You have a daughter? Yeah, he said quietly. She's 9. Smartest kid you'll ever meet. And she's the reason I show up every day, even when it hurts. For the first time in years, Veronica smiled, a small, fragile thing, but real. You're lucky, she said. No, Preston replied. "I'm just reminded that life doesn't stop hurting. We just learn how to carry it, until someone helps us set it down." The words hung in the air like a prayer. The hours slipped by unnoticed. They talked about loss, about choices, about the quiet moments that define who we are. When the night turned to dawn, Veronica walked him to the door. She looked different somehow, still broken but no longer shattered. "Preston," she said softly, "thank you for fixing something you weren't hired to fix." He smiled. "Just doing my job, Mum." 2 weeks later, Preston returned home to find a letter taped to his door. Inside was a check for $50,000 with a note written in elegant handwriting. "For Emma's future, thank you for saving mine." Virtue tears filled his eyes. That money meant security, braces, a new start. But more than that, it meant someone had chosen to live. Months passed. Veronica sold her penthouse, dissolved half her company and started something new, a foundation for widowed parents inspired by one man's story. And when she finally met Emma, she knelt down and said, "Your dad reminded me that life is still worth fighting for." Preston never asked for thanks. He just kept working, smiling a little more each day, knowing he'd been exactly where he needed to be that night. Sometimes the people who fix machines end up fixing hearts instead. And sometimes one unexpected knock on the door can stop a tragedy before it begins. If this story touched your heart, please like, share and subscribe to help us spread messages of hope, compassion and humanity. Every small act of kindness can save a life, sometimes in ways we'll never fully understand.